Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. Today I wanted to walk through my first week working through the Meet Me in the Bible, the story of Abraham. This is written by Colleen Searcy and put out by Crossway. It is an 8-week inductive Bible study plan, and I have fallen even more in love with it the more I work in it. I did do a flip through video of this whole book before I even started writing it, but I wanted to show you what it looks like now that I've started working through it. So let me jump in and kind of show you what I've done so far. So like I showed before, there is an intro that shows how to work through this study basically. Let me move everything over so you can see. So, you have your table of contents week by week, and then your forward, Meet Me in the Bible, what makes it different than maybe some other study plans. And I'm just going to flip through these real quick. And then it also talks to you about what's included in the study, what's included in the toolkit, what they have in the back, which I will show you a little bit of that as well as we work through this. And it gives you also some additional tools that you can use. So the first thing is why study the story of Abraham. And so I'm going to just read this for you because it is so good. Colleen Searcy writes, 12 chapters of the Bible are dedicated to the story of Abraham and his family, and Abraham is mentioned more than 70 times in the New Testament. He is certainly a key figure in the history of the Christian faith. His story helps us understand the rest of the Bible. The account of Abraham and his family is found in the book of Genesis. Genesis is the book of beginnings, the beginning of the world, the beginning of people, the beginning of family, and the beginning of sin, the beginning of languages. And in this book of beginnings, we see the plan for redemption begin to unfold. Genesis also includes the record of the beginnings of the Hebrew people, the people through whom God will show all other people groups what he is like. God begins the Hebrew people with Abram and Sarai. So I did a little study there, later called Abraham and Sarah, a childless couple from Ur. Throughout the rest of the Bible, we see their story broadened to include all those people who place their faith in Jesus Christ. We can read Romans 4:11 through 12. If you have placed your faith in Jesus Christ, the story of Abraham is the story of your family. You will find your ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, to be very relatable. Both will fall, and both will demonstrate great faith. Both will shoulder great heartache, and both will experience miracles from God. Both will feel forgotten by God, and both will be reminded that He always does what He says He will do. Both are called to a life of faith, believing the impossible. Both will give rise to the chosen people of God, their descendants outnumbering the stars. One of those descendants will be Jesus Christ, the bright morning star. Enjoy getting to know God better and better as you study the story of Abraham. Sorry, that was a mouthful, but I thought it was such a nice beginning and talking about why we should study it. And it's so cool how relatable both Abraham and Sarah are. So I mentioned that. Abraham means father of many nations. Sarah means princess. So there's just some little notes that I wanted to take in the beginning. Why study the story of Abraham? But next we have kind of the backstory one want to know, and also the context of what Genesis is written. Like why it was written, who it was written to, all that fun stuff. You also get one of these little cards every time you purchase one of these studies, Meet Me in the Bible. It helps you study. So we have observe and how to observe, and then interpret and apply. So that's a little helpful hint that they have, or tip that she includes in each one of these. I've loved having that, and it also is a great little place to mark your spot. But getting started in the story of Abraham. So who wrote the story of Abraham recorded in the book of Genesis? So we know that Moses wrote the book of Genesis as seen in Luke 24:27, which says, "And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself." So we have that little verse noting who wrote Genesis, and also in 24:44. we can assume that he wrote Genesis with the help from written records passed down from generations that were eyewitnesses to the accounts. When was the book of Genesis written? Likely around 1440 to 1400 BC, between the time Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt and his death. So, to whom was it written and for what purpose? God's redemption story is seen all throughout Genesis. We also have a book of origins. Genesis doctrines that we see in Genesis are creation, imputation of sin, justification, atonement, depravity, wrath, grace, and sovereignty. Questions answered in Genesis: where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? So those are some good questions to answer when we read Genesis. Okay, on the back side, we have a couple more questions. In what style was the book of Genesis written? Turn to tool 3 in the toolkit for help identifying the genre. So the book of Genesis is written in a historical narrative style. So it's a factual history recording of what happened. And like I said, there is an amazing toolkit in the back. So this would be tool 3. So there's Bible genres. So if you didn't already know, you can look to the different books and find out what Bible genre there is. Also, we're going to look at this later, but there's different tool 4, which is attributes of God. So you can look through that. This is exactly what this says, bookmark content. In case you lose your bookmark, then we have tool 6, which are prayer pages where you can add your own prayers. So there's a good chunk of those. Tool 7, questions for further thought and discussion. In case you're doing this with a group of people, there's going to be more questions that you can talk through and answer. So there's a good chunk of those to go through all 8 weeks. I believe that is the last tool, maybe not. Yeah, that's the last tool. But before the genres, we also have the map. So the world of the patriarchs, so where they went. So we can see where Terah and Abram traveled to Haran, and then Abram travels to Canaan. And then we also have a Bible timeline where you can add some more stuff. So the call of Abraham happened around 2091 BC, we find. So those are all the toolkits. So let's jump back to here. What are the central themes of the book of Genesis? So we know that it's a book of beginnings, but we also see creation, sin, and recreation. God's covenant with Abraham in here is going to be super important. And then in tool 1, which I showed you just now, place an X on the timeline to determine where the story of Abraham lands and the whole story of the Bible. So the call of Abraham, like I said, happened probably around 2091 BC. So that was just the beginning, but now let's turn to week 1. So this is broken up in 2 different weeks. Now I just kind of worked through this as I had time. So I think I took just a couple days to do it. If you're meeting in a group, you could do this, week by week. But, do as you please and how you like. I definitely grouped some of these together and didn't just do one thing each day. So the first thing that I love about, not the first thing, I love so much about this booklet, but I love that they have the reading in here so you can take notes. So this is what I first did. So in week 1, we're reading about the call of Abram and the journey to Egypt. So that's Genesis 11:27 through 13:1. So I am reading all this and I'm taking notes. Some of the things that I take notes on are, what do names mean? So like Terah means wanderer. Abram, like I said before, Abram means exalted father, whereas Abraham means father of a multitude. So how those names change. Abram's wife was Sarai, meaning princess. Also, Sarah means princess as well. Milcah was Nahor's wife. Nahor's niece. Also Nahor's wife. So I just put that little piece of information. Like, I'm just thinking of, okay, how does this family line look, number one. So I want to know that. I want to know what names mean and what people do, like what are their occupations. And so in this little second paragraph here, we're talking about Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, and his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. And so why did they settle there? Like, that's a question that I want to know. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. And so we never know really specifically what happened, like why did they stop there, but there's some thoughts in there. So the people of Haran served the same moon god as the people of Ur. So that's something good to know. And then in Joshua 24:2, which I don't have written down, but you can look it up yourself if you want. But it says something to the fact of Terah serving other gods, maybe something like that. I think it was saying, definitely look that up. Joshua 24:2. So there's a possibility maybe he crafted idols for like the moon god as the people of Earth served, since they were coming from that land to another land, and found that they were serving the same God. So why not craft some idols, I guess? So maybe that's why they stopped. Maybe Terah got too sick, too old. Maybe that's why they stopped. There's so many different, options that are never necessarily nailed down. Next, we have the Abrahamic covenant. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And so when I read this, I see I will, all these I wills, right? And so I'm highlighting those to make sure that I'm like really seeing those, because it's like over and over and over again. So we want to make sure that we know what he will do. So I wrote these to the side. I will show you, I will make of you, I will bless you, I will bless those who bless you, those who dishonor you, I will curse. And so I put those to the side. And then we see here, so Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And then we talk about where he goes. So then he's going to land a place called Shechem. Here we see other places in the Bible where we see Shechem are Jacob, Joseph, Joshua, the Samaritan woman at the well. And then the Lord appeared to Abram there and said, to your offspring, I will give this land. So we're just going through the whole chapter here. There's some words that I've kind of looked up their meaning. So I don't even know. Whatever means heap of ruins. Bethel, house of God. This was 11 miles north of Jerusalem, because I want to kind of see, you could also look in the map in the back. I actually forgot about that map, so I could have looked there. We can see that he pitched his tent. So he was a pilgrim, like he was always on the move, So we have the desert region as well here. But then we come to this little chapter right here. So this is 12:10. And it's now there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt. A little quote here that I believe I took from David Guzik, because I did look at his commentary. But he says, Abram should have trusted God to provide where he told him to go. Because of his distrust, Abram got kicked out of Egypt by a pagan king with a lot of baggage, including Hagar, who Sarai acquired there. So, later in life, that whole thing with Hagar, that wouldn't have ever happened if he had trusted God to provide in the famine. But Hagar was picked up when they went to Egypt. He had told his wife to tell Pharaoh that that she was his sister, which was, kind of true. They're half sisters, half siblings. But the point was, his intent was to deceive. So we see here that the Lord afflicted Pharaoh, and then eventually Pharaoh met his men orders to send Abraham away with his wife and all that he had. And he sent him away with quite a bit. We see a quote down here by David Guzik, and he said, God bless Abraham even when he didn't do what he should. God continued to protect Abram even when Abram acted like a liar. God did not call back his promise to Abram because the promise depended on God and not Abram. And that quote right there really stood out to me and something to remember for myself. And so I did do a Bible journaling page with that quote. But now we go on to the questions. So what I love also is there's a lot of notes. So if you didn't want to do all your notes like crazy with arrows and whatnot, I kind of like the look of that. But you also have a place where you could add your own notes here. But we're going to jump into observe. So as you see here, later on, the first week, Colleen actually kind of helps you out. But next week and weeks to come, let's just go here. The observe is completely filled in by yourself. So you see here key characters and locations. So you have a list for characters, a place for locations, a summary of the passage, what stood out to you and piqued your curiosity. And then on this side, for week 1, she has helped you out a little bit here with characters and locations, and also in step 2, keywords and phrases, which some of these I already kind of looked at as I was going through the passage itself. But first off, let's go through step 1. Step 1 is setting and summary. So first off, we have characters. So if you were writing this yourself, you would write Abram, son of Terah, husband of Sarai. He heard from God and obeyed. Sarai, wife of Abram, the author is clear that she was barren and she was also very beautiful. So the more studies I did, she was gorgeous. Some studies even had said that she probably was more beautiful than Eve. So, she was good looking. She was older, but during that time, probably middle age about. So, if we compare it to now, maybe she was mid 30s or whatnot. She was quite beautiful. Then we also have the Lord spoke to Abram and promised him land, blessing, a great name, and many descendants, and Pharaoh, ruler of Egypt. Next, we have locations. So we have where Abram and Sarah's homeland before the Lord called them to go. Then we have Haran, Abram's family stopped here rather than traveling all the way to Canaan. Canaan, Abram's destination, the land God gave to Abram's offspring. The Negeb, the region between Canaan and Egypt, south of the region that will eventually become Judah. Egypt, where Abram sojourned when famine struck Canaan. So then we also have summary of the passage. So I did a brief little summary. I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you, but it's a nice place to kind of try to keep it succinct. It's pretty hard for me to keep so succinct, but I tried my best here. What stood out to you or piqued your curiosity? Something that stood out to me was if Abram would have trusted God during the famine and stayed in Canaan, he wouldn't have been rebuked by a pagan king, and Hagar would have never been in the picture. Also, God is still faithful to fulfill his promise because the promise depends on God and not Abram or us. Step 2 is keywords and phrases. We see, like I had already pointed out, there's I will 6 times in that section. There's also blessing 5 times and dictionary definition to invoke divine care for. And then she writes, remember to enjoy God and listen as you study. Move to a time of prayer after you observe, recording your prayer on the prayer pages in tool 6 of the toolkit. Now, I didn't record my prayer in the prayer pages, but it's a great location to add that to if you don't already have like a prayer notebook or whatnot. Okay, then you have another page of notes in case you have some extra. And then in this section, step 3, we're going to interpret. So what was hard to understand? In the next chapters next weeks, you come up with your own questions, obviously, and then fill in some supporting stuff, insights from cross references, other translations, and the context. And so she has provided those questions for you this time. Why did Abram's family settle in Haran? Why didn't they go all the way to Canaan instead? That is one of the questions that I had already worked on, which made me feel good. Like, oh, I'm thinking of good questions as I'm working through this. But anyways, and then why was Pharaoh afflicted when Abram sinned? And why did Abram get to leave Egypt as a wealthy man? It seems like Abram is rewarded for his sin. So first off, question, why did Abram's family settle in Haran? She writes, why didn't they go all the way to Canaan instead? In a cross-reference, Acts 7:2-4, we read that after Abram's father died, God removed him or sent him from Haran to Canaan. It sounds like the stop in Haran had something to do with Abram's father, Terah. We don't know for sure why Abram stopped in Haran, but we know that God did not let him stay there. And so then I kind of rework that section. Oh, I actually wrote it down. Joshua 24:2. It says, Terah, the father of Abram and Nahor, and they served other gods. So served here is the study word, Hebrew H5647. It means to do work for. And so that's why I have that idea, and some other commentators have an idea of him possibly, creating idols for other gods. So I put that there. And then the answer to the second question, why was Pharaoh afflicted when Abram sinned? And why did Abraham get to leave Egypt as a wealthy man? It seems like Abram was rewarded for his sin. It says, hint, look back at the context on page 13 to gain insight. Who wrote the book of Genesis? To whom was he writing? Where had they just come from? How might the story of Abram being restored or being ordered to leave by Pharaoh, then leaving Egypt with riches, encourage them? So I wrote, Moses wrote it for the Israelites who had just left Egypt. It showed God's power and blessing to deliver his people from oppression. His redemption story is the ultimate goal there. Step 4, what did you learn about God? And it says to look in toolkit 4. That's the God's attribute one. So we know that he is compassionate, deliverer, he's faithful, he's immutable, loving, merciful, and patient. And the last page, I believe, yes. The last page, so you have more pages for notes in case. But in the last page, we're going to talk about what did you learn about people. So in this passage, we learned about Abram. He wanted to fix the famine situation himself, but that only brought him problems for years to come. Even with God's promise, Abram still failed at trusting God. We read about Pharaoh being a pagan king. He rebuked Abram still. What did I learn about myself? And so in this passage, is there a command to obey, an example to follow, a sin to confess, a warning to heed, an encouragement to receive? What action step will you take? And I just wrote the word trust. God and his promises, to go to God. Don't try to fix a situation on your own. So I want to make sure that I remember to trust God and his promises in every situation, which is sometimes hard to remember. Sometimes when we have those difficult situations, we don't automatically, I'm going to go to God about this situation. We try to fix it ourselves. And that is something that I want to steer clear from, and remember to always go to God and trust him. Wrap up. What did you discover in the scripture that was important to you? I wrote, God keeps his promises. They depend on him and not me. So I want to remember that. And then, guys, we have a whole blank page, and then we move on to week 2. So this is just a preview of what week 2 looks like. I hope you enjoyed this kind of run through of what my study looked like in this book, Meet Me in the Bible, the story of Abraham. If you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go look at it on Crossway's website. And I hope you enjoyed this, guys. Have a great day. Bye.